and welcome to Parks Associates webinar tracking the smart home and security markets. I'm Jennifer Kent, Vice President of Research with Parks Associates, and I am joined by my colleague Daniel Holcomb, who is the Senior Analyst for Smart Home Research at Parks Associates. Thanks, Daniel, for joining me today. Thank you all for being here. So much has happened already. We have a full quarter under our belt of 2024. And so we thought it was a great time to share a little bit of how we're seeing the smart home and security markets unfold for this year. I wanted to share with you a lot of what we're tracking for the market is part of our smart home tracker, smart home and security tracker service. And so we wanted to share some of those insights as we look at what's happened already this year and how things are moving and shaking. And so we're going to talk about share a little bit of our consumer data of how we see the market shaping up in 2025, show you a little bit of that service and the insights from that service. And then also we are coming up on Parks Associates' flagship event of the year, which is Connections in May. And so give you a little preview of what we'll be talking about there. Hopefully you're familiar with Connections, but if not, Connections again is our flagship conference where we bring together industry leaders from across the connected home ecosystem, service providers, internet service providers, security providers, device manufacturers, ecosystem vendors, different channel players to really talk about what's happening in the market, what challenges we can solve together as an industry, and what's really coming next. So that's May 13th to 15th at the Renaissance Dallas at Plano Legacy. So we hope you can join us there. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our sponsors. Thank you so much for supporting us for the in-person Connections event and the virtual Connections series that we host all year. So first I wanted to share with you what we are looking at when we're looking at smart home and security in 2025. The market really has come a long way. We survey 8,000 US internet households every quarter and have been tracking this market for a really long time. And it's encouraging to see when you take a really long view of the market, how this market has progressed over the years. We now have 45% of US internet households saying that they own at least one smart home device, up from just 10% 10 years ago. So really dramatic growth over the past decade of consumers seeing the value of connected products and services in their home. And importantly, this doesn't even include smart speakers and smart displays, who are very critical to the smart home story, of course, but also people use for streaming music and for setting timers and for things that aren't necessarily smart home functions. So door locks, thermostats, garage door openers, video doorbells, cameras, smart sprinkler systems, smart appliances. 45% of US internet households now own one of these in their homes. And what really rises to the top in the market today when we think about these different types of devices? There are really kind of four categories I wanted to highlight that we're seeing in our data really jump to the forefront. Video security devices, definitely number one, whether that's a smart camera or a video doorbell. They tend to lead adoption. About 20% to 22% of households say that they do have a smart camera or a smart video doorbell now. Maybe standalone, maybe attached to a security system, but they are pretty much always on the forefront of adoption, and also a really important platform for attached services like video devices and even professional monitoring. Another category that really is on the forefront in 2025 for the smart home is access control. And here we're looking at things like both smart door locks as well as garage door openers. We see a lot of development in that market. We see when we ask consumers about the types of benefits that they want in the smart home, benefits around access really rise to the top, both as part of a safety, security, peace of mind play, and also just that convenience in your life, allowing your kids to come home and get in easily, the ability to let other service providers into your home, just to the peace of mind knowing your garage door is open or closed and being able to close it remotely. So a lot of focus on access control and a lot of innovation there when we think about biometrics and integrating the lock with other types of devices in the home, whether that be video devices or lights or the security system. Another category that we see that's, again, kind of a hot area of the smart home coming out of 2024 and into 2025 are thermostats. The energy story is really interesting. The home, after some sort of plateauing around kind of the pandemic the past couple of years, we have seen some uptake. So about 16 to 17% of households do tell us that they have a smart thermostat. So they're well adopted. They also are a category that consumers who aren't particularly tech savvy really understand the value of. This is a device that can save you money. It has practical return for your investment in the device. Oftentimes there's also an ability to get these devices for very low cost, highly subsidized, or even for free from your utility or energy provider. And that makes sense to consumers. So, a lot of interest in smart thermostats, and also a larger energy story that we're tracking around kind of electrification of appliances and vehicles and connecting that into the home. And finally, smart lights. Seeing some great, interesting evolution from light bulbs and extensive lighting control systems to really fun form factors, not just bulbs, but tiles and squares and ropes and holiday lights and all sorts of things, which I think really increases the appeal, as well as we're seeing kind of year after year that both lights and locks actually are areas or products where security system owners maybe didn't pick them up in their initial package, but add them on later. So interesting opportunity for aftermarket sale there. On the security system side, we really look at the market holistically and really feel that the security solutions market is one that's made not just up of systems, but definitely standalone camera devices are really a foundational part of the market now. So households that don't have a security system but do have a camera or a video doorbell really are an extension of the home security market. Again, they're very much a foundation for services. So those competing in the home security market, attaching monitoring and video storage to those devices, and that story continuing to grow in 2025, alongside other types of services that can be attached to systems. Fire safety and fire monitoring is actually pretty traditional in the security system and has been offered for years, but we're starting to see households that perhaps didn't take or weren't aware of that option in the beginning get more interested in smart safety, smoke, carbon monoxide monitoring to add on to that safety value proposition in the smart home. And some players in the market, Ring partnering with Kidde, and some other partnerships that we've seen come out in the market recently, bringing in that smoke and that fire value proposition into their portfolio. As we think about where the market is in 2025, I wanted to share a little bit about how we look at the market internally and what companies are asking for as far as their intelligence needs and their strategy needs. And I thought it'd be interesting to share this externally as well. There are different markets go through kind of different stages of development and what they need and how they're going to develop their product development strategy and their business model strategy and their marketing communication strategies really changes as the market changes. And I think we're in an interesting place with smart home right now. So they're early part of the market. Smart home is definitely in this growth phase where it's a little bit messy and everyone's trying to just figure out how big is the addressable market and how big is this opportunity. And there's a lot of experimentation. You're trying to generate demand by really raising familiarity of the benefits that might be offered. We see generative AI very much in the growth stage today. We see MDU, property tech still in this growth early stage today, EV charging, solar and storage, home battery storage. Their smart water, insurance and fire and independent living are really still in those very early stages of development. There's a lot of conceptual testing that's happening there. But the smart home, we feel like now with 45% of households owning at least one smart home device, is moving into this maturing category. And also smart video devices feeling like they're there as well. You're talking more about a more mass market consumer, not the most tech savvy innovators and early adopters who run out and get those first things. You're starting to see some leaders coalesce, starting to look at really where's the money, what's sustainable here, what business models are going to set a foundation for long-term success, and investors start to ask, where's the return, and seeing a really clear picture, path to profitability. And then you have markets that are more mature, commoditized, even internet services there. Smart speakers to an extent are there. They've really plateaued the last couple of years and kind of fulfilled the demand that was there at this point without a new kind of opening of substantial more value on top of that. Smart speakers and home security. And so the folks in those markets are looking at who's moving around to different players, and then also keeping their eye on what's going to disrupt what's been an established business model or an established way of providing a service. And of course, home security has been highly disrupted over the past 5 to 8 years, and smart speakers going through another round of almost back to the beginning with generative AI. So interesting to see how all of these markets are developing. And very much a focus on profitability and consumer IoT generally right now. We did this work with Cardinal Peak, so shout out to the Cardinal Peak team, with a white paper that we released earlier this year, really looking at what it takes to get to profitability in consumer IoT. So wanted to share how we're thinking about this and how a lot of the companies in the market are thinking about really the full value of a solution, having and how you get to that to cover the full costs that you have to be thinking about. And if you're coming from a manufacturer's point of view, particularly traditional manufacturers who are trying to develop a connected product line, it can be hard to really think through all of the different costs that you're going to have beyond the traditional development, manufacturing, and landed costs that you might be used to for a kind of an unconnected product line. You've got, of course, the app development, the cloud development, you've got ongoing cloud costs, sustaining engineering costs for the next generation of products, and ongoing tech support, because you really are providing a service, whether or not there's service fees attached or not. You now have a product that you're supporting over the long term. And so how are you going to put together hardware sales and service fees and some cross-selling or upselling opportunities, and maybe there's value of the data that you're capturing for partners or even internally within the organization that makes sense for you. So we see a lot of companies, again, in this maturing market, taking a really hard look at each of these elements and figuring out where they can optimize to make their business model make sense. Another area, of high discussion is really where is the competitive edge today. We just finished fielding a survey of you all, actually. So thank you very much if you participated, of a B2B survey of industry executives who are working in product development and executive strategy and communications and marketing for consumer IoT connected home products, and asking, what was your outlook on the market today? We actually just closed this on Monday, so we're going to reveal some of the top line findings at Connections. But this key question around, where is the competitive edge today? There are two things that really came to the top. One is AI capabilities. Again and again, people were talking about AI is the differentiating edge today, as well as ecosystem integration. Sometimes I said ecosystem integration first and then AI, sometimes AI first and then ecosystem integration, but clearly that's where a lot of attention is in the market today, as well as partnerships. So whether that is a partner to really a channel partner to get in front of different customers, or partners with other product categories that are adjacent to yours, a lot of focus on what partnerships make sense and really give you the edge over somebody else. Highlighting a couple of folks at the top who are bringing AI to the conversation for sure, Kognitive and Origin and Ubiety. And when we think about the competitive landscape, what's interesting is that yes, the tech giants come to mind first for consumers in who they think of when it comes to smart home, and a lot of that does have to do with smart speakers and some of the apps that are available and the ways that you control from your phone. But when we ask about, well, who would your preferred provider be? Or where, in the conversation about hubs versus no hubs, we were no hubs for a while, now we're swinging back to a hub landscape. What type of device would you like to be a centralized control hub in your home? And it's almost anyone's game here, right? Naturally, people think about smart speakers or displays or standalone hub devices as options, but also the smart TV, also security system panels and hubs, also the Wi-Fi router. So internet service providers, entertainment companies, all having a seat at the table. And you can, there's companies from all over the landscape, that are looking to have a seat at the table, and be some of those lead brands, in front of the consumer. As we think about the competitive landscape in 2025, we certainly have our eye on Apple and what Apple is going to be up to. Lots of talk about coming to market with a smart display product and maybe even a camera product. Some news out that might be for excuse me, later in the year at this point. But anytime Apple, of course, comes to market with a product, it definitely reshapes that competitive landscape, brings a lot of attention and awareness to the possibilities of that product category, and would certainly change the market if they come out with either of those products this year. Another kind of interesting piece on the competitive landscape is the entry of more entertainment-oriented brands into smart home. So Roku being a great example of this. They're already an operating system within the home, but from the entertainment landscape, and really the top CTV operating system across their streaming media, players, as well as their Roku TV operating system. And so consumers are very aware of this brand and really engage with the brand. If you have a Roku device in your home, engage with them daily, right? And multiple times a day. And when we tested interactive TV features in 2024, the number one appealing interactive TV feature that we tested, showing the top 5 of a longer list here, was actually seeing video from doorbells and cameras and security systems on the TV. So some really interesting evidence from consumers that there's an interest in overlap of this, what have kind of been very distinct silos in the home to this point, entertainment versus smart home. But these types of integrations are attractive to consumers and brings companies from the entertainment side to the table as having a right to win. Okay, just also wanted to briefly touch on, of course, there's business challenges right in front of the market as well, that we're keeping an eye on for 2025. We asked in our B2B executive survey here, what challenges are you focused on? What do you see right in front of you that's keeping you up at night? Number one answer is impact of tariffs. People are concerned about pricing, about the cost of products, of materials, manufacturing, what would higher prices do for the demand for smart home products, as well as somewhat related housing market challenges. Housing, when you buy a new home, whether that's a new build or an existing home, or move homes, is a very key moment for people to buy home products and home services, make renovations. And so a constrained housing market constrains the smart home market as well. Final one that I thought was really interesting that was popping up here is the challenge of keeping up with the pace of innovation. So this speaks to AI, for instance, and generative AI as this next opportunity to provide value and differentiate feature sets, et cetera. But also it can be costly. That R&D is costly, right? The partnering with some of the great solutions on market can be costly. And how do you do that and make a business case for it? But there's no doubt in my mind that actually some of the smart home buyers, your customers, are going to be some of the folks who are most open to AI-powered experiences. And in fact, we do see that even today, smart home device owners do have higher familiarity with generative AI tools, for instance, than those who don't have smart home devices in the home. So we can talk more about the impact of AI in the market. We're going to be talking about it a ton at Connections, but definitely something that's going to be shaping the market all year for sure. So love for you to join us at Connections. I also, before I hand it over to Daniel here, wanted to call out one way to access some of our research that is made available complimentary to everybody in partnership with industry players is through our white papers. And we published a white paper with Kwikset around modernizing the multifamily housing with retrofitting access control. And so that's free and available to download, as well as one with NICE, really focused on opportunities for custom integrators. So if you're interested in those topics, you can access some more of that research there. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Daniel. He's going to tell you a little bit more about the Smart Home Tracker and share some of the insights from this first full quarter that we have under our belt of what's happened in 2025. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you, Jen. And thank you everyone for joining us. It's really exciting to showcase our insights. We dig into this, and so it's really great to be able to share with you so that you can share in our excitement and learn a few things. I learn something new every day on this job. So I want to start off by talking about the Smart Home Tracker product that we offer, and just a high-level overview about what I'm going to be sharing insights from. Parks Associates has a smart home and security tracker that tracks everything related to the smart home, including home energy management, including the business models that go into the smart home and home energy, and security as well. And also tracks just some of the latest trends that we're seeing. The service itself tracks the 5-year forecasted growth of smart home device categories, as well as the market activities of different players, essentially what they're coming out with, what kinds of business moves they're coming, that they are engaged in. We're even looking at the financials in many cases as well, if they're publicly available. And then we also look at ecosystem comparisons, comparing the platforms and the different product portfolios that are available, as well as the software that supports those, and partnerships, acquisitions, mergers, and new entrants. We talk about the go-to market strategies that are involved, the different plays that players might engage in order to increase market share and differentiate. And then we also talk about the player profiles and the trends of security systems, those that are new and emerging, and the point solutions devices. For those that are publicly traded, like I said, we also look into financial information and divulge that as well, and just kind of track over time the different earnings reports, especially for the security system players. And then, of course, through this product, there's also access to the Parks Associates analyst team. Within these products, we actually divide it up into two different types of products. We divide it up into a quarterly deliverable and a monthly deliverable. The quarterly deliverable includes an Excel spreadsheet that lays a lot of these comparisons between the product players and platforms out, and also includes our annual forecast that forecasts the next 5 years of growth in units and sales. And then, of course, we have a monthly news tracking product, which essentially allows us to track what news is happening in the smart home, lay it all out there, and give our thoughts about what we think it means. And we also include in that some high-level topical editorials. And you can see, for example, in January, we had an editorial that really covered the top 5 trends that we saw at CES during our Connections Summit. And that was a very interesting topic to dive into. You can read more about it on the product, or you can also get sort of a taste of it from our blog on our website. The Smart Home Monthly Tracker also included, beyond the editorial, several different news items under different categories, such as home security, home energy management, AI networking standards, M&A, funding, partnerships, and business models, and then our perspectives on the news and why we think these are important. So you can see there's quite a bit offered here. If you look at February, which we released at the beginning of March, usually by the beginning of the middle of the next month, we had an editorial that really talked about smart home services, first really laying out the consumer interest and adoption of the different services available out there, as well as the interest in the kind of services that would be a real bridge to the smart home, and then finally the growing choice of smart home service providers. And again, we also tracked the various news items and their impact on the market. If you go to March, March was a very interesting month because we had our Smart Energy Summit co-located with Distributech. And we also released our quantified consumer study on smart energy at home. And so for that, the editorial that I wrote covered the basically the intersection of not only what we heard in our conference there at Distributech, but also what we've learned from our consumers through our research in Q4. And then, of course, more of the news tracking and some strategic insights on those as well. And then for the Smart Home Security Tracker service, if you are interested in that, we do have a way that you can get more information on that by using the QR code on your screen here, or you can reach out to us and we'll give you more information about it. If you are wondering how you can subscribe to this service, and you're wondering if maybe your organization may already be subscribed, definitely we encourage you to check within your organization or check with us. You can create an account on our website, which will give you a reading room. And if your organization is a license, you should be able to get access through that as well. And then we want to give you a little bit of a set of sample insights from both our quarterly deliverable and our monthly deliverables. Starting with the quarterly, one of the things that Jen talked about earlier in the session was our focus on sort of the really key hot topics that we think are really significant for 2025. And one of them was locks. We have seen a lot of news come out about different locks on the market and different features that are being offered, such as NFC capabilities, and of course other capabilities that are really becoming common in locks, including like biometrics, for example. And one way to really think about the lock situation is, where does that fit within the portfolio of many of the companies that are maturing, many of the leaders in these categories? And our Smart Home Tracker really offers some insight into that. If you look at some of the major leaders within the category, you'll see that many of them have their own portfolio when it comes to cameras and video doorbells. They own their own portfolio, and they can really, really offer a differentiated product that they themselves have complete control over. However, if you look at the smart door lock category, there's a lot of cases where that's not really a part of a company's core portfolio, and it's something that they may have to partner with other companies in order to make that happen. So smart locks and smart access control are really maturing, are becoming more and more important to include within security offerings. But to get started with, many companies are leveraging partnerships and leveraging other companies to make that happen. And you can also see in our consumer data how important that is becoming, as well, as our data shows that increasingly consumers are adding those devices like smart locks to their existing security systems, going from a near 20% back in 2022 all the way up to inching up close to 30% in 2024. All right, and then next, I want to talk more about also another area that we've been focusing on. Jen talked a lot about smart thermostats and how that's becoming a major play within the smart home as well. And we do think that smart thermostats are really a major way towards energy management. And you can see that we also track a number of brands that are in the market. These are the active players. But it's also important to know that despite the fact that there's so many active players in the market, there are just a few who dominate. Google Nest and Honeywell, based on our consumer data, really take up about half the market of purchases in the last 12 months. And so that's really important to understand, is that for many of these other players, they think very strategically about how they're going to differentiate, how they're going to take a bigger share of that market. They can do this through any number of ways, through partnering with security players, for example, or insurance players, also within other players within the energy industry. And so we think that that's something that a lot of these companies are going to think about going forward. And of course, within that, there are a lot of partnerships, as you can see. The smart thermostat industry does have a lot of players within the leader space that really have to work with other players. For example, Amazon working with Honeywell for smart thermostats. And of course, you can really round out your energy options with other pieces of the portfolio. You can look at like companies like Vivint that really have a very wide set of offerings across energy management, but there are other companies that really are not quite as developed in that area, and they have to work with other vendors and providers. White labeling is very common in this area, and I think will be a major important component going forward as well. Now, beyond simply the quarterly piece, we also do track, as I mentioned, the monthly news, and then we talk a lot about the offerings there. And so, Jen, if you could go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we had talked about earlier in our monthly segments. For example, when it came to the discussing Connections Summit at CES, we really wanted to figure out exactly what was going and listen to the chatter, but also really think about what our consumers were saying and combine those. And the result was that we really saw that AI was becoming really prominent in everything, but we also see, for example, that AI is something that our consumers in our consumer data are concerned about. They're concerned about privacy and data breaches and the like. So there's definitely a lot of concerns around AI. So it's in everything, but there is a reason to make sure that you're taking a very careful approach to developing it. We also see that the smart home is moving back to the hub, even though consumers do not at this time consider the hub extremely important to their purchase. They do want that connectivity, those ecosystems, and manufacturers are really looking to incorporate the hub as a way to be able to enhance the ability of that ecosystem to perform. We're also seeing that Matter is becoming more relevant as more consumers or as appearing more products and more consumers are adopting it. But multi-protocol is the future, which is why many companies like Trident IoT are working on, for example, adapting multi-protocol in their semiconductor offerings. Then, of course, you have the smart lock, as we referenced, a lot of features coming out in smart locks, a lot of attempts to really push that forward and make that a piece of the overall security space. And then, of course, the final trend we saw was that security devices have matured, but not a whole lot of new features and applications. And there really is that concern about making sure that people are getting what they are paying for out of that. Are they moving away from security systems more to devices? Are they incorporating more devices into their systems? And we are seeing definitely more devices being taken within systems as well. And then we also have our Smart Energy Summit that we conducted, where we talked about several topics that came up in a lot of our panels. And a lot of our consumer data also speaks to these things, such as the idea that consumer-centric electricity simplicity is needed for home energy management and for getting people to adopt home energy management systems, and that there needs to be collaboration between different players in order to make that happen. Demand response is at a crossroads, with participation being somewhat challenged. Many people have participated in the past but are not currently participating, for example. And then how do you get that participation up, especially with the needs of the grid? And then, of course, partnerships being critical to increase participation in utility programs more broadly, especially given the fact that on some level, the adoption of large equipment like solar is really not increasing all that much, which means people will be more dependent upon the utility programs to reduce demand at home. Beyond that, we also, though, cover a lot of the in-depth stories that we've heard about through the news and talk about the impact of that. The next slide showcases one of those examples. such as Arlo partnering with Rapid SOS. Jen, if you could, oh, there you go. And with Arlo partnering with Rapid SOS, we've seen that in over the years that security providers have encountered a challenge where false alarms have essentially eroded trust in law enforcement with security systems. And to remedy that, the industry came up with the AVSO1 standard, which essentially creates a system to help verify alarms before law enforcement is notified. And that way law enforcement can be more assured that what they're responding to is a real threat. And Parks Associates research shows that this comes at a really important time, as 40% of professionally monitored security system owners are concerned about emergency response times. And the partnership between Arlo and Rapid SOS guarantees that devices which are becoming more of a threat to security systems are still becoming part of the landscape with some trust included by having a component for verification. We also talked about earlier this year the importance of home energy management storage. It's something that we asked our consumers about, and we have seen some stories about that in our news lately, which we covered, such as Pila Energy's user installable smart home battery. With home energy management and storage, one of the challenges for consumers is that many of your home energy management storage solutions involve expensive equipment and expensive pro installs that can also be somewhat time consuming. And Pila came up with a bit of a better mousetrap by creating a plug and play solution that could help power devices and appliances during a power outage. It also has so much capacity, I think, that you could, in fact, actually potentially power your house when rates are more expensive. And Parks Associates research does show that 44% of U.S. internet households consider a self-installed battery backup system appealing. And not just for power outages, but also for cases when energy is more expensive. So battery solutions do have quite a few use cases, and our research shows that consumers want that, and the industry is meeting that demand through different solutions that consumers can take advantage of that are, in some cases, plug and play and a little more economical. Another story that we showcased this quarter was Samsung expanding their smart appliance line. Smart appliances have been a real challenge for the smart home industry, owing to the fact that they're more expensive and the replacement cycles are a lot longer. Added to that, the fact that the features may be somewhat challenging for consumers to decide if it's enough value for them to spring for the extra cost of that over a standard appliance, means that the adoption has stayed very low for smart appliances. Many companies are really looking at enhancing the value proposition of these appliances by making them hubs for the home, for example, and increasing their feature set to really be truly integrated and interoperable. Samsung's bespoke AI line is an example of that, and we see that that's really helping increase the value proposition of that particular set of products. And so that's really a little bit about our smart home tracker product. We think it's really very valuable and has a lot of great insights. And definitely approach us if you have any questions about that. And now we'd like to take some time to take your questions and answer them. And rejoining me is Jen.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel, for that walkthrough. Some of the big stories that we captured. Certainly not all of them. A lot happening, especially when you've got CES kicking off the year. You know, there's always all sorts of announcements, and of course, ISC West just happened, so a lot of coverage of that in our April, update that'll be coming out. We did get some questions in here. I wanted to start with one that I saw that you put in a response in the chat, but just for others and for those who might be watching the recording later, a great question around smart speaker manufacturers and who's dominating. So, if you wanted to maybe recap what your response was there around, who's really leading the smart speaker category.
Oh, you're talking about the question I answered in the chat. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Again, for those who might be watching later, they're not going to get the benefit of seeing that, and so I think it's a great question. So if you wanted to kind of expand on what you answered in the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the question we got was which smart speaker manufacturer is dominating, and that the question also said that I'm having a difficult time finding audio manufacturer playing in the ability to communicate with multiple platforms. And this was an interesting question. Amazon is my answer was that Amazon is really dominating adoption both in terms of the smart speakers and particularly the control platform. We've seen that they are heads and tails above all the other platforms when it comes to the preferred one for smart home control and just what people use every day. And and I think 59% selected Amazon Alexa as their most used platform in Q4. So that's not an insignificant number. I mean, it's really, I think, they far and away dominate. I think they will continue to for years to come. That being said, one of the interesting things to watch is Gemini, because I do think that Gemini could pose a real challenge to that. It's to be seen whether it does or not. But the whole point is that you're moving away from simply just seeing the smart speaker as a device to play music on, but also as something for smart home control. I think that most consumers aren't even aware that their smart speaker could serve as a Thread border router, for example. So I think the idea of incorporating AI into this, I think, can help make that smart home more interoperable. We could have the AI suggest something like the AI could come out and say, "Hey, I noticed you got these devices. You want them to work together better." And so there's different ways that could play out. But yeah, at the moment, Amazon is really dominating. And I also think when it comes to smart speakers specifically, we've seen several market exits of some of the less used speakers over the last few years. I can't remember exactly which ones that I phased out from our tracker and from some of our survey questions, but they actually like literally just exited the market just really quietly. And so there is a bit of a consolidation going on. It also does not help that the adoption of smart speakers has stayed stubbornly consistent for for probably like 2 or 3 years now. We're not really seeing much movement in the adoption of that. So I think that creates a bit of a bottleneck too, where Amazon can maintain their dominance by just keeping things just so, which is why I do think Gemini is a really important entrance to the market because it could potentially shake things up. And if Apple finally gets things going with Siri, who knows?
Yeah, we have seen, I think I shared a chart earlier, that we have seen a slow but steady increase of people using Apple, whether it's the Home app or Siri or the HomePod, as the main platform that they're using to control devices in their home. It's been a very kind of minor player till now, but a slow and steady increase of that over the years. And so that's why we think that, of course, if Apple does a little bit more in smart home this year, it'd be pretty impactful. Yeah, great questions, everybody. I love these. Okay, so one quick, easy one I can answer also to Keith about. Oh, actually, no, sorry, it wasn't Keith. Patrick, thank you for asking about water sensors in the categories. So I think you're talking about how Daniel was showing some kind of product portfolios and who is offering what different product categories. And we do track more than what he was showing, including water sensing, water leak detection, humidity detection, shut-off valves, smart sprinkler systems, even then in the appliances category, smart water heater. So we do think that smart water is important and interesting. Certainly in the insurance play, starting to see some more insurers, look at smart home devices for the ability to try and adjust that risk. Insurance providers have had a really tough time in the past couple of years, mostly due to kind of really naturally occurring events, disasters, fires, hail damage. We're in Texas, a lot of roof replacements, and so insurance costs going up so dramatically to the point where some insurers are exiting certain markets. And so is there an opportunity for smart smoke detectors, smart stove sensors, right? Anything that can bring down the risk of damage, whether it be through fire or through water, really important. So we do track that as part of the portfolio. Thanks for asking.
I also see a
We
question
yeah, go
here
ahead.
that I think I'm sorry, Jen. I see a question here also I'd like to address too about demand response, expanding on the limitations of demand response and how the utilities are addressing these limitations. One of the biggest, I think, limitations in demand response is just getting the participation. It's about whether the programs are available, but also then like getting the message to consumers about that and then getting them to sign up. So there's like several things that you have to accomplish to get demand response participation. And our data shows that demand response participation doubles if you get if you have a smart thermostat. So in some ways, getting things like smart thermostat on the wall can be really helpful, but you can't just simply hand them out. You need to make sure that they end up on the wall and they end up connected for that to be really useful. One of the things that we heard in the Smart Energy Summit, last month, was that it might have been 2 months ago now, but one of the things we heard was that one of the challenges is to get people to opt in, but there aren't a lot of opt out. So if you can actually start people off by automatically opting them in and then giving them a choice to opt out, then that's one way you can maybe avoid that limitation. But also our research shows that incentives are a big motivator, particularly incentives that you can see on a monthly bill, which is really about seeing those savings at the register, if you will.
Awesome. Okay, thanks for taking that question. Great question out here around our analyses limited to the US versus other areas of the market. Region-based year-over-year growth. We do a lot of international research on a custom basis. So most of the syndicated research that you'll see in our roadmap for the year focuses on the US consumer and size in the US market. But then we work with brands kind of one-on-one to focus on the regions that they're most interested in. So would love to understand if there's a certain region that you're looking at or certain product category, with smart home in particular. It's kind of an umbrella for all sorts of different actual individual product categories. So we find that different teams kind of have a different focus in different regions. So would be very happy to help there. Also, did you find any concern around privacy for the luxury segment? So that's definitely something that we can see because we test both brands, and also spending, how much you spent on certain products that you acquired, as well as install. So did you have a custom installer for instance, like out of the CEDIA channel? And we also do a lot of testing on privacy and security concerns. We tend to see that those concerns, some of it's generational, but actually a lot of it is around sophistication of your use of the product, that actually your concerns tend to grow the more that you get into smart home, because you're becoming more aware of the vulnerabilities, perhaps, that you're putting yourself out there. So privacy and security is definitely a barrier to some people coming into the market. But then actually the severity of concern that you have goes up the more devices that you own. So it's really interesting, people saying, well, I'm concerned, but not enough to stay out of the market. I want these products in my home. But I do know that the more I get into the smart home, the more I'm potentially putting myself at risk. But would be interesting to look at it if there's a difference between going with a more luxury provider versus a bunch of DIY devices in the home, and if concerns vary. So I'll follow up with you on that. It's a fun way that we could look at the data. Okay, let's see. Lots and lots of good questions. Okay. And if I don't get to yours, apologies. Oops, just exited out of one.
There's a question here about insights or forecasts on current economic conditions, interest rates, inflation, and tariffs. We're actually working on our forecast for the next 5 years right now to be included with our Q1 update. And definitely, I don't know if I can reveal too much about it right now because we're still working on some of the details of it. But essentially, probably the most I can say about it right now is that effectively we are expecting some things to trend down on smart home devices a little bit less growth in that. Maybe one of the challenges too rests to some extent on things like households. One of the things that we are seeing potentially is the possibility of some negative household growth in the next year or two. And so we want to take kind of a conservative view on this because we don't really know exactly what's going to happen 5 years from now. So we are trying to really focus more on the 2-year end of it and really be a bit more conservative as we go out farther beyond that. And we do think that there's definitely going to be some challenges there with the tariffs impacting the market. Now, if Jen, if you want to say more about that, I don't want to say too much without giving away too much of the
No, that's great. And thanks for asking this question. Certainly, we're getting asked a lot over the past few months about the potential impacts of tariffs, the actual impacts of tariffs, what's consumer price sensitivity in the smart home market. And so I can share a couple of the different ways that we think about it. One is that there are differences for different product categories, we think. When you think about safety and security products and services, oftentimes demand for those types of services actually increases in times of uncertainty, societal upheaval. We actually saw a great demand for products of safety and security products during the COVID-19 pandemic, and there was also a good bit of social and political turmoil at that time. So in that way, actually, some uncertainty is somewhat a driver for smart home, or for especially the security systems and devices. And also those types of services being a little less price sensitive because people feel like it's a core service that they may like to keep versus something else they feel like they could cut. I think that the other product categories might be kind of nice to haves and be a little more impacted by rising prices. One of the issues I think that we see for the market as a whole is the fact that we're really at this place with smart home, or we're starting again to get into a more mass market customer, expanding beyond the early innovators, early adopters who tend to not be that price sensitive. They're interested in the tech, they're buying the tech, they're spending their disposable income on the tech because they find it interesting, it's a hobby, it's fun, and they easily see the value in their lives. When you're getting into that kind of early majority, and certainly after that, you're getting to a much more price sensitive customer anyway. They're looking for very practical value, practical return on their spend. That's why smart thermostats are such a great product category for that type of customer. Older consumers really gravitating towards smart thermostats. And so the problem you get into for the market as a whole is with price increases, potentially driven by tariffs, you really sort of block that expansion to new households that may have just been considering coming into the market, or they're on that first device and maybe they won't buy that next device because they're watching their spending. So we do think that, it has a chilling effect on the market generally. Some product categories more impacted than others. Thanks for the question. Okay, maybe we can take one more, and then we are going to share with you a little bit of the agenda that we have going and the keynotes that we have for connections in order to make sure you all know what's happening at that event. Maybe we can take the question from Brent about the move to hubs decreasing the initial value proposition of Matter. I see them actually somewhat as complementary. Daniel mentioned that, look, Matter is important, but also multi-protocols here to stay. I think that Matter does some important things that solve some real pain points for the customer around things like initial product setup and onboarding and making those types of processes standardized. There's going to be different solutions that come out that use different protocols. We think Z-Wave's still here to stay. People are still using Zigbee. Definitely a lot of manufacturers choosing, Thread. And so we are continuing to be in this, market where you need a hub, at least for certain pieces of your system to work together. But the ability then to really share different types of data and then select who you want your control device to be. And you may want to have a different control agent for different types of things in your home. Like I use voice a lot for lights, but almost never for my garage door opener, right? And so I want to be able to control this certain set of things or these certain routines in this way and not in this way. And so we really see the coexistence of both continuing. Okay, Daniel, was there any other like last one you wanted to pick out? Or we have about 5 more minutes, so we can jump to connections.
Yeah. Just briefly, someone asked about the second trend that we talked about in the smart home editorial for January, about trend 2, the smart home moving back to the hub. What could be the reason for this trend? And I think it's a trend on the industry side to really create hub functionality in any number of devices. And our view of that is that largely this is to make it easier on less tech savvy consumers who are now part of the mainstream adoption trend, so they don't have to think about what extra equipment they may need to increase the functionality and interoperability of their smart home. It's just already built in and it just works, which I think is really the idea of like a truly interoperable smart home that appeals to a wider mass market.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. So, as I mentioned, wanted to wrap up here reminding everybody we would love to see you at Connections. We have several days of bringing leaders in this market together to share what they're focused on, what they're bringing to market, common pain points that the industry is facing. Our day on Tuesday always starts off with a workshop where we're sharing more of our data. We also have a really special session this year that's a roundtable session for those joining us in the workshop, where we are sharing more of that B2B survey insights about how you're thinking about your strategy. And then we have industry leaders who are acting as table hosts to come together and talk with you about, really the business models and the things that work and don't work, to really encourage some industry collaboration here. We are talking about AI all over the place, what's working, what's not, talking about, what's innovative on smart home services. We have some fantastic keynotes lined up, so very excited to be hearing from Moen, Interactive, Raymond James, Wi-Fi Alliance, Train, Anchor, Vivint, Thread Group, and AWS. So really industry leaders here again, with so much to share, so much expertise. I am very excited to be learning from them and listening to what it is that they have to say. Thank you so much for joining us today. We wanted to offer a $500 discount off of your registration cost for attending today. So you can see that code that's up there. And I think our team put it in the chat as well. So if you aren't already registered for Connections, you can use that code for a discount. And here is that QR code, and I'm sure it's in the chat as well. And just one more kind of final thank you to our sponsors for helping us to put on Connections. And I just wanted to leave you with a word of some of, again, the big questions that we see folks like you and your peers and your colleagues kind of across the industry really working on this year, that's really shaping our research and going to shape what we talk about at Connections, which is how do you serve an increasingly mainstream end user? How do you operate profitably? What's your competitive edge look like in this new era of AI? AI is not new to the smart home at all, but we're a little bit in a new phase. How do standards efforts unlock competition or opportunity or competition? What market segments are ripe for expansion, and how can you be a better player in the ecosystem and actually maybe leverage your assets for where there's value to others that isn't necessarily direct to consumer, but perhaps another business in this ecosystem. So those are the types of questions we're also helping our clients through our strategic consulting services. So if you're interested in working with us directly, please reach out. And thank you all so much for joining us today, for your fantastic questions. We'll be going through them here and seeing if we can follow up. I know there are so many we didn't get to. So thank you guys. And yeah, reach out if you need anything. And I look forward to seeing you in the Dallas area in May. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.